The number one thing is none of them want to commit to the section or commit to the landing. Surfing is all about speed management and reading the wave. It's something else when you do something that you know almost no one's done before, or you know that it took like every bit of skill that you've acquired your whole life to make that happen.
Hey guys, welcome to the Basis Surf Podcast. Super excited because today we have Matt Meola, who's one of the world's top aerial surfers. He did the world's biggest spindle 540. Kelly Slater did the first 540, I think, but Matt's was just like way bigger, way more tweaked. We dive into that air. We dive into a couple other airs, even breaking down a simple air. It's just full of nuggets of gold if you are trying to do airs. But, I think that not all of you are trying to do airs, and all the advice he gives is still highly relevant for you, regardless of what maneuver you are going to perform in, going to be focusing on performing. So definitely tune in, even if you're not an advanced surfer. This one is full of nuggets of gold. And hope you guys are excited. Welcome to the Basis Podcast. We have Matt Meola in the house. He's one of the world's top aerial surfers, and he's charged big waves, even got nominated for Double XL. Paddle big wave entry. I remember seeing that wave. It was nuts. But he's also a hunter, a fisherman. And so I'm just feeling incredibly grateful to have Matt on the show. Thanks for joining, Matt.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, I just kind of wanted to start off from the very beginning. We're going to be talking about your journey through surfing through the lens of how to improve as a surfer. Why don't we start at the very beginning and just talk about, how you got into surfing in the first place?
Oh man. When I was super young, my dad was into surfing, so he would bring me out on his board when I was really young. But it probably wasn't until I was 12, 13 that I really got into it. I was like more into skateboarding and stuff when I was younger, and then I ended up moving down to this little beach town called Kuau, and I had a bunch of friends who lived there, and they were all into surfing, so the beach was right by our house, and we would just all hang out together and go surf, and that's when I really started to get into it.
Nice. So were you a little bit behind then versus your peers? If they had been surfing all the time and then you ended up kind of moving over and then getting into it at the age of 12, or were you kind of in line with them, or what was that like?
Yeah, I was totally, I was not nearly as good as most of them. A lot of them were like already doing all the contests growing up, and were like, most of them were like the best kids around, it was like, our crew was like Albie, Kai Barger, Billy Kemper, and they were all like winning contests as kids and stuff. And I kind of learned from them.
Well, that would be definitely a good crew to learn from. And so how do you think that affected your mentality then? Did it make you hungrier that you were kind of chasing them and you had these peers that, you could obviously learn from, but you always felt like maybe you were a step behind and that just gave you this drive, or how did it influence your surfing?
Honestly, at that age, it was just all about having fun. I never really thought of it that way. I just, I feel like I just it just naturally happens that you start to improve. And it wasn't until I got a little bit older that I wanted to get better, but I just never really pictured myself being a pro surfer like at that age. I just was like trying to have fun with my friends, and it wasn't until I was quite a bit older that it just kind of all happened, and that became my job. But really at that age, it was just more about having fun and going to the beach and just trying to, I think if you do anything, you want to get better at it, right? Like every time you go out, you're like, oh, I want to do this or that. But no, it was never like a thought in my head, like, oh, I gotta freaking be a pro surfer. I just didn't think it would happen.
Yeah. Got it. And do you think that
that approach to it of pure fun. Probably, I mean, it's interesting because I was talking to Nakoa, who I know Isaac, and you guys are all friends with, and when I talked to him, he kind of had this like chip on his shoulder because he'd come from boogie boarding, and so he was like all about this kind of like drive and just real competitive approach to it. Whereas you sound like you're coming at it from much more of like this fun and just experimental mindset. And do you think maybe that's influenced the way you are as a surfer? Because one of the things that you're known for is being one of the most creative aerialists. Like, you're doing things that no one else is doing, and I wonder if there's a connection there between the two, where you're just approaching it from this perspective of fun and just experimenting, and maybe that influenced your approach on the wave in later on in your life at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think because I was really into skateboarding, that's kind of how I wanted to surf. And then we would just like all watch surf movies, and then you'd have like your favorite surfers and you just want to copy their moves and stuff. And yeah, I don't know. I just always like was into trying to like do tricks and stuff. I remember my dad was like filming me one time, and he's like, "Why do you keep like trying this crazy stuff? You're never gonna land it." But like, to me, it was like that was like my favorite thing, and I was like, "What do you mean? Like, I'm having fun."
Yeah.
And then, eventually I started to like land stuff, and I was like, "Oh shit, can't believe it."
What was it like? I mean, so what was it like when you landed your first air?
I don't remember my very first air, but I do remember the first time I did an air reverse. And yeah, I had this like little yellow board, and yeah, I just freaked out. It was at this little wave. The wave we grew up surfing was this little left, and then at the end of every wave it had like a little air section. So I remember I did it and just freaked out, like was claiming it, and just like, yeah, it was a pretty crazy moment for me.
How old were you when that happened?
I'm so curious what it actually looks like. It was probably like the worst little air ever.
That's always how it is, right? You always think it looks way cooler than the reality is. But I don't know, the airs you do now, I imagine they must like look crazier than they even feel in your head, right? I mean, just some of the stuff you're doing. I don't know.
It's kind of what surfing's funny. Like, sometimes you think you do something that's like so insane, and then you see it on footage and it sucks. Or it can be the opposite, where you do something and didn't feel that good, and then you look at it and you went, whoa. Like a few months back, I was surfing and I did this air, and I was convinced it was like one of the best airs I've ever done in my life. Like, it felt huge and like insane. And then I looked in, and my filmer was not on the beach where he had originally started, and I was freaking out. I was like, I can't believe he missed it. Where'd he go? Like, what's he doing? And I was like having a panic attack, because I was like, that was like, like stuff like that in surfing doesn't happen all the time, right? Like,
right.
It could be like a pretty pivotal moment in your career if you land something that crazy. And I was so bummed out. And then I came in like, I can't believe he like left or something. And then it turns out he had just moved down the beach into a different area. And then I was like, oh, did you get it? And he's like, didn't seem that excited. And he's like, yeah, I got it. And I was like, I went and looked at the clip, and I just started laughing. It wasn't even like, it just looked like an average air. And I was just like, I can't believe I just had a fucking tantrum in the water and like thought you missed that and thought it was the best air of my life. And now I'm looking at the clip, and it looks like no better than any.
Oh man. Oh my God. Well, there is this one air that I have a video of it. I was maybe a little bit later, I was hoping that you would walk us through it, because it is the craziest looking air. It's just wild. My friend and I were talking about it before this, and it is just a little bit later. Maybe we'll get into it, but I just want to backtrack a little bit more. So you'd mentioned how you used to skate a lot, and did that influence your surfing and your approach to the airs and all that?
I think so. just because in skateboarding, like any trick you do, you have to get off the ground, right? So I think I kind of took that mindset to surfing, like, oh, if I want to do a trick, I gotta like get in the air. And I just think that's where my mind was at. But yeah, I'd say skateboarding, like I had a little half pipe like in my garage, and when I was on the half pipe, I was pretending I was surfing, and then when I'd be in the water, I'd be pretending I was skateboarding, like it was like
Yeah. And did you feel that translation from one to the other?
kind of. I mean, the technique is so much different, but the mindset's there, and then just like balancing and stuff translates. But I guess there's similarities in technique, but it is quite a bit different.
Mm.
But if you look at a lot of the guys who have been pretty like progressive as far as airs go, a lot of them have a skate background.
Yeah.
And are actually like really good at skating, like Eric Geiselman and John and stuff. And I think it just helps, I was never nearly as good as them at skateboarding, but I feel like it did help.
Yeah. And you look at that whole generation of the young female surfers, they're, coming up on the North Shore, and a lot of them kind of come from skate backgrounds and they're getting into airs as well. So it definitely seems like it's helping. Or I'm looking at Jackson Dorian, like, you see videos of him when like, he was a little kid, just like on that little half pipe that Shane built for him. And obviously he throws the craziest airs. So for like, let's say you're dealing with like if you're trying to improve and figure out how to do airs, like what would you do on a skateboard that would help emulate it? Just going on the half pipe and just kind of, how would you approach it? What kind of advice would you give there?
A lot of it is like commitment. That's a huge issue I see with people trying airs. Like in the beginning, is they're almost like afraid of the landing and afraid of the section, and they might hit the section, but they'll launch like out the back of the wave or something and be afraid to like totally commit to it. And I think you just like, especially in skateboarding, you really have to commit to your landings and just like have confidence that the board's going to be under you, and it's the same with surfing. You just have to like totally commit and not be afraid of falling.
And how do you commit to the crazy airs that I see you do, right? Like last year you were, invited to the Pipemasters. I can't imagine trying to do an air at Pipe. You know what I'm saying? Like that looks just insane.
That was pretty, I was pretty confused when they invited me to that. I was like, I guess I gotta like take the opportunity, right? But Pipeline's it's kind of a trip because you got to ride a pretty big board.
Yeah,
and those big boards are terrible for airs. But the wave is so powerful that if you did get the right wave and section, you can make it work. But the waves were so bad and in my heat, and I just never really had an opportunity to try one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was and honestly, I do airs every day. I was like, I kind of want to just go get a barrel to get tubes, but I was really hoping that it was just going to be like firing, and I was going to be like, all right, I went out and got a couple barrels, I'm good. But yeah, I never really even got to try.
Yeah, you didn't get to try it. Okay, got it. All right, so going back, you're growing up with, Albie Layer and Billy Kemper and all this. You're working on your airs. You're just trying to have fun at this point. And obviously you're getting a lot better, and you're getting a lot better at surfing. So then at what point did it kind of tip where you kind of got to that point where you became like one of these elite surfers? I mean, I know you got that section in Intersection and you got like $100,000 from that one part. Like, what was the buildup? How did you get there from being this kid that kind of got into surfing a little bit later in life relative to your peers?
That was definitely like the turning point in where I was like, whoa, I'm actually doing this. we all surf together and we take turns filming, and then I felt like I was getting better and stuff. And then there was the intersection contest, and I did it just like thinking, how cool is this? Well, actually, no, you know what? I got into competitive surfing for a bit, and I did a few QS events and that whole deal. Once I was, at that kind of age where you would start doing that. And even the ones like I did all right in and like made some heats, I realized I wasn't having much fun. Like, to me, the fun part was like traveling with my friends, but like while I was out surfing, I hated it. I just like felt so much pressure and just felt like I couldn't like surf how I normally would want to. And so I kind of decided that I didn't want to do that anymore. And then that Taylor Steele thing happened where he had that contest, and I had saved up some footage from Maui and entered, and that's and then when I made it into the next round where I was like, okay, I'm in the movie, then I got to like focus on making my final part, and that's kind of what started my career,
Yeah.
I think I didn't win that event, like I wouldn't be surfing still.
Hey everyone, it's Van. Hopefully you've been enjoying the podcast. Hopefully you've been listening to some good stories, getting some good tips that are helping you improve as a surfer. If so, make sure to subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review. It'll only take you literally a few seconds, and share it with your friends. That's the best way you can support me so I can continue to create awesome new content for you. So thanks.
When you made that part, did you realize like how wild your surfing was, like how far out it was compared to all the other surfers? Were you self-aware of that, or were you just like, oh, I'm just doing my thing and this is like what I do?
Not really. I think I personally felt like I wasn't gonna win. I still surfed like a kid, I wasn't like, like some of the guys in that video were like full-grown men and like surfing like real pro surfers, and I don't think I was at that level. I just think people were excited about seeing like someone new and young who had maybe like a little bit different of approach, and it was just like a surprise to them and they were stoked on it. And I think that's kind of what helped me a lot. Because people have been watching a lot of these other surfers for years, right? So I was like a new face and had a little bit different approach, and I think that's what helped me.
Got it. Yeah, you're doing like Superman's corrupt flips, all this crazy stuff. And at this point, were those maneuvers relatively easy for you, or was this like, were you pushing your own limit there in terms of getting that stuff?
I think it was just like, I wouldn't say they ever felt easy. I felt like at that point in my surfing, I was still like learning a lot every time I went out. And it was all like, whoa, I landed that. Sick. It's going to be a good flip, Whereas I don't get that as much now. I feel like know what I'm doing a little bit more. And it's like, and when I go out, I'm not like, like those tricks like that other people have already done, like drop flip, like you're talking about, and other stuff. Like I was trying to learn something someone else had already done. Whereas now I'm trying to figure out stuff that someone hasn't done, or like trying to push my own limits in that way. But, so it was all like kind of just like a surprise, like, oh, I did it. I finally did it,
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
I got it. So then what was for someone that's trying to do airs, what would be your best advice to them?
That's the number one thing, is none of them want to commit to the section or commit to the landing. Like some of them can get in the air and actually do it, but then as soon as they're about to land, they go like, and they give up and they go like limp legged, and they don't like just try to pull it. And that's the thing. You have to try to pull everything. Like when I was super young, I'd do an air and I'd fall into a layback, and I'd lay back for like 10 seconds and I'd still be trying to get up. Like, I'd just be like, oh, like, and I think that helps a lot because it just like gets you really comfortable in those weird situations where you're off balance, and also you get really good at falling. But yeah, I mean, commitment. I mean, with the wave pools now, that's just like been the biggest game changer. Like, I didn't have that as a kid, but you see all the new kids, they're learning shit in, you know, a day that would take like 10 years for, you know, before.
Right. Because you don't have that same section that presents itself so you can practice the same thing over and over again, right?
Yeah. But man, in the ocean, you know, you get maybe 1 or 2 sections a day if you're lucky that are actually really good. And in that pool, you just get it on repeat, the same exact one over and over. And it's like, it's crazy to see all the young kids like Jackson and Aaron Brooks and all these kids, how much they've progressed in such a short amount of time. And they would have never been able to do that without the pool. You know, like, it's really changing surfing. It's going to be crazy to see in like 10 years, you know, the new crop of kids.
Yeah.
With all the new pools.
That would be crazy, actually. I mean, I think about like in climbing, for example, that's one of my other sports. But in climbing, when they used to not have indoor climbing gyms, right? So everybody used to climb outside. And that pretty much limited the progression a huge amount because you can only train like, you know, when you're outside. And as soon as the climbing gyms came around, like, people just got crazy strong, started doing crazy stuff. I'm sure surfing is going to get revolutionized just the same way.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. So I actually have 2 videos of airs that you've done. Would you mind if you walked us through kind of like what was going on in your head as we were going through these, as you're going into these airs?
Yeah, let's check them out.
All right, cool. So the first one is a relatively simple, more straightforward one. We'll just play the whole thing first, and then we can go slowly through it. And then you can just walk us through what would be going on through your head when you're doing that.
Yeah.
All right, so.
Where would we do that?
All right, so we'll go slow first. So I guess, you know, why don't you walk us through step by step kind of what's going on in your head as you're going through this here?
Most waves you catch at this spot, it's like my home break. You catch these lefts and they're pretty choppy, and you kind of just have one attempt at something, you know? It's so this wave obviously had like a little section. It wasn't like a big section or anything.
And you're just looking right here at this little lump right there that's starting to form?
Yeah.
Yep.
And you're just kind of eyeing that down, and everything I usually do is really last minute decisions. Like split second decisions on what move you're going to do, depending on what the wave does, right? So that I'm probably don't even know what I'm going to do yet right here. I'm just kind of waiting to see what this section does. She played it a little more. Let's see. Let's see what it does here. Yeah, so there's just that little teepee. It wasn't quite big enough to do like a psycho rotation. I mean, I could have done a rotation off that, but it just wasn't like one of those like mega pop, you know? And I probably right here started to be like, okay, not a rotation. And then let's see. It's like almost like an alley-oop section, but I decided not to do an alley-oop. And that grab and little tweak, that's just a move that I kind of like to do. I feel like Kelly Slater used to do those back in the day, like kind of like a like nose high and like tweak and then like bounce off the floater, you know? So I think I just kind of I like doing that move on the right wave, and I think I just kind of was like, I'll try one of these.
Nice. So it's a really reactive kind of instinctual thing that happens just depending on the way the section looks, and then just kind of the way your body's moving relative to it. Then it sounds like, huh?
Yeah, and I, there's tons of times where there's a trick in mind that I want to land, and I'll look for waves that potentially have the right section for that.
Mm-hmm.
But really, it just comes down to doing what the wave is best for. And you can't like force a certain maneuver if it's not good for it, So you make those just last minute decisions. But you can strategically try to catch waves that are going to be better for certain stuff than others,
Right. And then, when you're taking off on this wave, it seems like one key element would just be having enough speed, because the more speed you have going into it, the more you're going to be able to project off whatever section's coming through it, right?
Yeah, I mean, surfing, no matter what you're doing, surfing is all about speed management and reading the wave. And like, no matter what you want to do on a surfboard, it's all about reading the wave and speed management for any move you want to do. And yeah, and obviously if you want to get high in the air, you have to be going fast.
Right. And so I would imagine, and this must be part of what makes it so hard, and kind of what you're talking about with the wave pool, is just being able to read the section and know what that section that's starting to form is going to end up being the right section to perform, to do that air, and what kind of air, right? That must take so much practice to develop that memory bank of the way the wave is going to look, and build, and so that you know what maneuver to perform on it.
For sure. And if your speed and timing isn't right, like so many times, and I still do this all the time, I'm eyeing down a section, and then I have to figure out when I need to start pumping in order to hit it at the right time. And sometimes you start too early and you get to the section just like a half second too early and you don't get pop. Or you get there a half second too late and your nose pokes through the lip and you lose your speed and pop. So it's like everything has to be perfect. Like, and on those ones where you get like really, really good pop and crazy rotation, like you feel it, like your board hits the lip and it just goes thunk, and it just like launches you. It's almost like effortless, right? And so, yeah, timing is everything.
Yeah. Well, let's take a look at this other wave. Maybe this is the sensation you're talking about, because it looks pretty nuts here. It is the craziest air. I mean, it basically looks like you're upside down before you even like disengage from the lip. This looks so nuts. And I don't know, how shallow is that water that you're landing in? I don't know. This thing's insane.
It's like nearly dry. Man, that actual air is like, it pisses me off because, okay, so we were filming for John's movie, and that from the front angle, you can see how gnarly the wave actually is. And so the filmer that day forgot his smaller lens. So he had to shoot this fucking angle way down the beach that was like, doesn't show how, like the front angle of that wave, you can see how gnarly it actually is.
This thing looks like a sick barrel.
Oh yeah. There's photos of it. This is the funniest wave. It was like, I feel like if that was on footage from the front angle, my career would have like been way nutser.
Really?
Yeah. It was like that to me was like one of the craziest airs I've ever done by far. And it is so crazy. There were other filmers that day filming like Kalohe and a few other guys, and they didn't film it. and there was a photographer who shot it, and there's photos, but like half the photos in the sequence were like missing, like were like messed up or out of focus or something.
Yeah.
Right. There it was in what was that magazine? I'm having my brain's not working. I forget. Kai Neville and them. What was their magazine?
Oh yeah. What Youth was it?
It was in What Youth.
Yeah.
The photo sequence, but like half the photos are missing. But it was like such a big gnarly section, and I just couldn't believe that I pulled it. Like,
what? Yeah. So walk us through it. Like, what was going on in your mind as you're like looking at this section? I mean, this thing looks just like, I mean, it's dry, like you said, and then that lip is just thrown at you like crazy. Like, were you scared at all? Were you just like, I'm going for it? Like, you're just like, screw it. It doesn't matter. I want to land this thing. It doesn't matter. Like, if I break my legs, like, what was going on through your head when you're going into this thing?
we were filming for John's first big movie. It's in Western Australia. It most people only surfed it when it was glassy, like in the early mornings, and it's like a pretty nice, fun wave. But we rolled up to it one day, and it was like, like this, and side shore, and looked like trash, and the section looked like it was on complete dry reef, and we're like, kind of looks like good for airs, but it's kind of dry, and ended up surfing it. We're like, whoa, this is a crazy wave for airs. So we ended up surfing it a lot that trip. And I'm pretty sure like before this wave, John and Albie both caught waves and did like sick airs, and they were on the inside. And like a lot of times after the section here, you're like, you have to like kind of starfish on the reef, and like, you can't really like duck dive. You just kind of let water like roll you, and then you like skirt out the little channel.
Oh God,
it's really shallow. But they were on the inside, and I caught this wave, and I just remember looking at the lip, and it was just so like insane cupped out, and I just like hit it, and it just like happened, and then I just stomped, and I remember just like hitting, just like landing, and just being like completely glued to my board, and went, I can't believe I just pulled this. And just like the whitewater exploded, and I just started shooting out of the whitewater, and then John and Albie were like screaming, and it was like a crazy moment. But I wish that was on film from the front angle, because I swear my career would have been like way better.
Oh my God, dude. I mean, so when you're going up into this thing, at this point, it was probably just like all instinct.
It was all, yeah, that one was like full, like the wave just like did it for me. It was just like a kind of a Hail Mary, like, oh, I was going fast, and the wave was so cupped out and crazy that all I had to do was ride off of it, and it just did everything on its own. Like, and I just got lucky that I was like squared up on my board.
God. Yeah, I remember, I mean, it wasn't in air, but I remember I saw this clip of John doing a carve into like a similar section, but it looked like he was like upside down as he was doing the carve.
Mm-hmm.
It was the wildest thing, except here you're like upside down as you just like boost for this like crazy air.
It's almost like a front flip type deal. I think I just kind of like looked down, and then with the wind blowing that way, it keeps it on your feet, and you just kind of did like a roll.
So there's no way you could have even practiced for this thing either, right? It's just like the right section came at you. And it
just like Hail Mary, just like, I'm just going to hit it. And then it just like worked out.
Wow. Man, was that the best feeling in the world, just landing that air right there, or what?
Yeah, I was tripping when I pulled that, and I didn't realize how heavy the wave was until I saw the photos from the front angle, and I went, whoa, that was like the nutsest thing I ever did.
Crazy. So what feels better, landing in air like this, getting barreled at Jaws, or I don't know, taking out an elk from like 100 yards with your bow or whatever like that. You know, which one's what's the best feeling?
I've never really got a real barrel at Jaws. So I wouldn't know that. You could ask Billy. He's actually here in the garage. But man, I mean, an air like that, and there's a handful. That one, there's another one that like really stick in my head, and to me, that feeling kind of trumps all of them. Like,
Yeah.
as far as for me, you know, because I can imagine getting barreled at Jaws is just the most fucking crazy feeling in the world because there's so much adrenaline, you know. But yeah, I mean, when you achieve something in surfing, like a crazy air like that, or catching a heavy wave, and I mean, that's the feeling that all surfers are addicted to, right? And I feel like it's crazy. I've been surfing my entire life, and there's only maybe like 5 times I've had that, like, that feeling.
Really?
Yeah.
What were the 5, you know, times you've had this experience where you're like, this is the peak? I mean, this wave. Well, what else?
Well, you get similar feelings when you're learning to surf, right? And you're accomplishing new things, but it's something else when you do something that you know almost no one's done before, or it's just like or you know that it took like every bit of skill that you've acquired your whole life to make that happen. And like that was one of the airs when I landed. That there's this thing I did, like the spindle flip 540 thing when I did that. And then I did another one that wasn't as flippy, but it was a double rotation. That, and then I caught this wave at Jaws, which at the time just felt like a big ass wave. And when I did it, it was more when I saw the photo that one like stuck out in my head. So I was actually more just terrified and thought I was going to die on that wave. But in this wave I caught at Maliko a couple of years ago, those are kind of like the top moments in my career where I just like, yeah, it's just like, that's what you're searching.
Yeah.
And then obviously, like you're wanting me to compare them to like elk hunting or just, it's just a little bit different, but it's, in a way it's the same because like with bow hunting, you train a lot. Like I'm really into it and I practice all the time. And so like, you know, when you like shoot a really nice buck, or it's just like a lot of effort goes into it. So it's like really rewarding. And it's just a little bit different feeling. There's like surfing, I'm searching for that, like that feeling I get from doing those things. But what's similar about them is every wave is different. So it's like the unknown is what I like. Like every wave is going to be different. And the possibility of doing something crazy is like, you know, always there. And in elk hunting, it's like you never, or not elk hunting, just I mostly hunt deer here on Maui, but just not knowing what's going to be around the next corner, right? Or to be here, and it's never going to play out exactly the same. And it's just like that unknown, right? And the surprise factor. But yeah, I'd say the best feeling in the world is those feelings you get surfing. It's just, it can be frustrating because they don't happen very often.
Right.
When it doesn't happen for a while, you start getting kind of bummed out, and then the better you get at surfing, the harder it is to get that feeling, you know? You have to go bigger, better than what you've done before. So
Totally.
it starts getting harder and harder. Whereas when you're learning everything, every day you progress and every day you achieve something new, and, you know, just doing a proper cutback can be exciting. But now, like, that I'm older and I've did some cool stuff, it's like, fuck, man, it's really hard.
So I'm curious, you know, I think so for that the spindle flip, right? That one you had to train a lot more. That one was one that you were like practicing for, right? Like,
Yeah, that's something that I had like practiced and done the rotation out the back of a lot of waves, and kind of I always wanted to do that double rotation. I've been trying for so long to do it, and honestly, on that wave, I didn't think that was going to happen when I did that one. That one was a trick, because normally, like, when I'm trying to move, I know that that's the move I'm doing. But that one, it kind of just happened. I thought that I was going to do a kind of a corked out backflip on that wave when I was hitting the lip, but it had so much pop, and the way I hit it, when I got the board into my hand, it just flung me so fast that after I had done the first bit of the rotation, I was still spinning, and I was going, oh my gosh, I'm coming down backwards. Whereas I wasn't actually trying to. So that was a tricky one.
wow. And how many times did you fail before you landed that thing? Like, how many attempts did you, like, hundreds, thousands? Like, how many years or months were you practicing that thing for?
Well, I really wanted to do a double rotation, but you don't get that many opportunities in waves that have enough pop to even do that spin.
Right.
So it was a thought in my mind, and it was something that I've like tried out the back a bunch, but I've never there wasn't many times that I had landed back in the wave backwards before. Like, that was one of the first times that I totally did the whole rotation and was coming back into the wave. So it was like, whoa, like, I don't know how many times I tried, you know, like, it was more of like, I knew that the rotation was possible, and I just never had many opportunities to try it. Like, I would try, but you'd only get halfway around, right?
Right.
You do the first part of the rotation, but you just didn't have enough hang time to get around. So that was kind of one of the first times that the spin went all the way through, and then I was like coming down into the wave.
Man, it just sounds like so much luck involved in this as well, right? There's the skill of you having the skill, but so much of it is just like, did you get the right section, and like, did the wind blow in the right direction, and all those things coming together at the same time. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's the big issue I run into, is like, I want to do these extra rotations and all these things I have in my mind, but you don't get opportunities. And it's kind of turns me off from surfing a lot of the time, because I can look out in the water and go, it's just, I'm not going to get that opportunity today. It's not big enough, or the wind's not right. And then I go, well, surfing's not as fun for me when I know that that's not possible.
Right.
Well, it's a trippy thing, you know, whereas when I was a kid, surfing was fun every time I went out. And it's not that it's not fun. It's just like, I just am like, man, I know I'm not going to do something psycho today. The conditions just aren't going to let me. So I'd rather go do something like hunting, where that possibility's there, that possibility of excitement and the unknown, you know?
Right. There's still that, there's still more adventure. You know, you kind of feel like, oh, well, this time I might shoot the biggest deer. And there's still that possibility. Whereas with surfing, you can be a little bit more, you know, you have a better handle on whether that will happen or not. Interesting.
Yeah, it's a little more black and white, you know?
Oh, got it. Well, we're running up towards time now, so maybe just one last question. You know, so you do have this course that's coming out. or that's already come out on airs. And you mentioned, how important commitment is, generating speed, reading the wave. Any last tips for people that are trying to do airs? What's your best advice for people trying to do airs or just surfing in general?
It was funny when Inertia asked me to do that course. I was kind of like caught by surprise because I had never really thought it's not how I learned. So, I never really thought of it in the way they wanted me to explain it. So it was kind of a trippy thing. Like, what do you mean a course on doing airs? Like, it's just all based on feeling and repetition, right? And I'd never broken it down step by step. And I personally don't learn that way. I can't I try to picture myself listening to what I was saying on that course and then going out and applying it in the ocean. And it's too many little details. Like, it's so based on feeling. So it was a really interesting thing, but everybody learns differently. And like, I used to think that coaching was stupid, and I just didn't get it just because that's how I didn't learn like that. I had coaches and they helped me a lot with like strategy and a heat when I was younger. But like, as far as learning, I always just would watch a surf movie of my favorite surfer and then just go out and try to do it. But I never broke it down step by step. But now, I'm seeing a lot more coaching going on, and I'm seeing the level of surfing progress, and I think that it actually can help a lot. So, I mean, as far as like teaching airs, I think like if you want to get good at airs, going to the wave pool is the best possible thing you could do. And then get a session at the pool, trying the air section over and over, and get filmed so you can see yourself, and then you can compare it to footage of someone else actually doing the move. And then you can really pick apart what you're doing wrong. And someone like me could easily watch it and go, oh, you fucked up right here, or you should have done this or that, right? But that's the best possible way to learn. And when I started getting a lot better at surfing, it was because we all started filming each other. And we were able to watch ourselves surf, because you could think you're ripping, and then you see yourself on footage and you go, oh man, I look like shit, right? So I think like, just really paying attention to your favorite surfers and trying to, do what they do, and then film yourself and compare it. That's the best way you can get good at surfing, for sure.
All right. Well, wise words. My buddy does airs, and he doesn't even bother trying to compare himself to your surfing because he's like, yeah, anything Matt does is just totally unrealistic for normal surfers. Man. But appreciate it. Thanks for joining, and thank you for taking the time. And I'll see you around.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Hey everyone, it's Van. Hopefully you've been enjoying the podcast. Hopefully you've been listening to some good stories, getting some good tips that are helping you improve as a surfer. If so, make sure to subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review. It'll only take you literally a few seconds, and share it with your friends. That's the best way you can support me so I can continue to create awesome new content for you. So thanks.